Welcome to the Inside CCW Safe podcast with founders Stan Campbell and Mike Darter. If you're forced to fight the battle for your life, CCW Safe will fight the battle for your future.
Hey, welcome back to the CCW Safe podcast. I'm Mike Darter in Oklahoma City. And, of course, here with Stan Campbell. And we're also here with Rob High. Rob is our newest addition to CCW Safe. He's been on the show before. Use of force expert. How many years in law enforcement did you have?
A little over 25.
25 years in law enforcement, trainer, use of force expert. What we're going to do, if you didn't see the show before, we're going to have Rob introduce himself, kind of go over his background, and then we're just going to talk about some of the things that may be coming up. Because we're excited that Rob is here because 2021 we're going to have a lot of really good content. We're going to have new academy classes. And so why don't you introduce yourself and kind of go through your history?
Yeah. Rob High, really honored to be here. I started with the police department early in 95. Went from there. Actually, my academy class was the year of the Oklahoma City bombing.
That's right.
And we were actually activated about a month into the academy and actually put out kind of baptism by fire and worked that scene for a while. Just supplementing the officers that were already out there working around the clock. I finished up the academy and went into patrol like every new guy does. Stayed there for about 3 years. During that time, I had a lot of supervisors and command staff that really kind of opened doors for me and allowed me to get a lot of additional training, some instructor level certifications and things like that. So I taught all three of the critical disciplines. So I taught pursuit driving, firearms, and our self-defense stuff. And it was at a time when self-defense was taught, but there was really not a whole lot of really solid what's my word?
Probably techniques.
The techniques were just really lacking. We did a lot of silly stuff, but guys were doing the best they could with what they had.
Yeah. Remember the hair pull?
Yes.
What was that?
And you just kind of wound up making it more of a survival of the fittest kind of things and just beat people down.
Yeah.
Well, what would you do on Stan for a hair pull?
Wow.
I was just wondering.
What is happening right now? Dude.
That's funny.
It'd be an eyebrow grab. I didn't know we were going to be rude today. What's going on? I'm sensitive.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that.
That's funny.
Speaking of that, Rob, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but, and when you think about the police department, the evolution of training is truly important.
Yeah.
All of us have been through it. When we got on, especially me and Mike back in the 90s, the only thing we could remember when we left was the armbar takedown.
Correct.
Because everything else really was throw out the window.
Yeah.
And it was survival of the fittest. It was, whatever you could do. And, as we moved on and we made changes in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially when you came on board, we started really, doing some things. But kind of keep talking about, how training has evolved, on the police department. And it's kind of the gauge that everybody goes off. Concealed carriers go off as well.
Sure.
That's the gauge that we have is the police department on shooting incidents. But go ahead.
Specifically, if you remember our gun defense, holstered gun defense, strong gun defense, disarming techniques, things like that. They were so far behind the curve.
Yeah. They were doing stuff in the 70s.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we were doing things like mechanical control things in a lethal force attack.
Yes.
And so it really wasn't difficult to make the change with command once we explained this is where you're at on your threat level. And then we moved on to really some hard defenses that would end that attack, relatively quickly.
Yes. For an example, what Rob's talking about is, we had, techniques in which we had a gun out. Should have brought one here today, but you have your gun out and someone grabs your wrist, and we would do this turn thing and do all kinds of stuff to, put them in some type of wrist lock.
Right.
And it didn't make any sense. And then just one day we were watching the kids do that, and I looked at my hand and I went,
change hands.
and I pushed the gun into the other hand. I was like, well, now all they have is that. And, so it's just simple changes, but it's like, you have to evolve. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again because it'll get somebody killed.
Right.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, a lot of that stuff is from the 70s. It was almost like the old,
Adam 12.
karate,
Yeah,
the old like Japanese jiu-jitsu type of things. If you do this, then this and this. And it really, that went on up until, when we got on, they were still doing that stuff.
Correct.
And then,
Well, we did that until about 98, 99.
We made the first change in 98.
And they were huge changes.
mm-hmm.
The other part of that is there were things that you were never going to remember and recall under stress.
That's correct.
Right.
You had like 10 steps to get through this to end up in a wrist lock.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was just trying to take your gun and kill you with it.
Yeah.
So we simplified a lot of things. We made our counterattack much harder, much more extreme, and fitting for that circumstance.
Violence of action.
Yes.
To make it more impactful.
Right.
And acting like, knowing that and operating in a realm where you know that you're in a deadly force situation, and you have to be right there and ready to take a life if need be.
Right. So we, I came into the program for self-defense about 99. Stan was running it at that point in time. There was a lot of evolution going on right then. Mike, when he became an instructor, helped brought in a lot of change.
Mm-hmm.
Even guys learning how to fall and how to roll out of things.
Mm-hmm.
They were so horribly taught. They were really, really messed up. And having guys come in that had martial arts backgrounds and things like that really made the transition to training and teaching that stuff really, really safe.
That's right.
Because we had guys just trying to learn how to fall, how to roll out of things. We'd had injuries, like significant injuries. Guys were washing out of the academy because they were getting hurt so bad, which is that's horrible. Especially when there's much safer, easier, more effective techniques to do.
Yeah.
And I think all of us had our own little role over the years in and
there was a lot of things that, like, even when Mike went through my instructor's class, it was right after his shooting, and some of the things that, because his background is extensive as well, and some of the things that we were doing was just so dated.
Yes.
And and it didn't make sense to Mike, and Mike wasn't afraid to let us know. He's pretty aggressive at times. I still have an elbow problem because of him. I'm telling you, he was really mean to me again in '97. But I'm gonna walk away from that. So, but Mike was able to bring some things from his judo background, Aikido, and really help us, evolve the program and make it make more sense versus just because we're doing it on the mats, but you have to train like you're going to be in the real world.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that we were doing, if you land on concrete that way, it's not going to have the same effect. And then Mike was able to kind of evolve us into, no, you keep this fluid and moving so that, you can stay in the fight. Because you can actually put yourself out of the fight if you make the wrong move.
Oh, yeah. At that time, I remember it was the falls were straight back, feet on the ground, straight back to your shoulder blades.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that on concrete.
Oh, yeah.
Or, you have,
something behind you.
Something behind you that you're not. Yeah. So, there were a lot of changes during that time. I mean, really, I think that was really when the kind of first changes started coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, when Rob and Kent, and then on to like Travis and Brian and them. Then that curve, you know, we were going along, and then we started that curve, and then it just kept going.
Right. Yeah, so
and
actually,
saw
you know,
massive
just
changes.
prior to that, you know, we had the 2000 changes, so really the 2001, 2003 changes, where, you know, we had Jeff Gonzalez was on, a former Navy SEAL, you know, a few podcasts ago. And, you know, when he was in BUD/S training, there was a man named Lou Hicks that was a Master Chief that he went under BUD/S training under. And, you know, Rob and I had the opportunity to train under this guy, and he was amazing.
Right.
And, you know, he actually changed our philosophy on how to teach, because that too, you know, and for you guys who carry concealed and you train on the range and stuff, if you keep making mistakes and you're training negatives, that's what we call that. You keep making the mistakes and you're training your mistake, you're going to make those mistakes when it comes time for, you know, you to save your own life or someone else's. So he taught us how to really identify what type of learner you are, and really get the information across, identify these things, and not train negatives. So, you know, that was some rough training that we went through in Baltimore. And that too, you know, started evolving the way that we deliver the information. And then as we moved on past the torch, Rob had his run at running the program, and then passed the torch again to Kent and you know, Pick and
Travis.
Yeah. So I mean, we really did help, and I mean, it's probably about 10 guys helped really evolve the program over the 20 years that we were involved. Correct.
Yeah.
And it's actually developed into, you know, we've all trained all over the country, and I've never seen a program that rivals it. It's like the best program in the the nation right now. They're really solid, and they've not stopped. I mean, they continue on that upward plane and just get better and better.
That's right.
And the bonus with that is we come into this and have those experiences and that base of knowledge that it's something that we can move on and start offering this out to just concealed carry holders.
That's
right.
right.
It's just the members that are out there that are concerned, and they're putting in the time to get better and understand and make themselves safer.
Yeah. And then, you know, we all sat on boards and stuff in which we were able to look at the use of forces that officers are in every day.
Right.
And all of those things that we've learned there, and just, you know, being to sit back and break down the actions of others, you know, under these extreme circumstances, we bring all that to CCW Safe, especially when we look at the things that you guys are involved in. So we have the opportunity, and then the other thing that's really special about our group and our organization is that we try to think about what we can teach you guys to keep you from getting into certain situations. And, you know, teaching you to, like what Rob said, some of the things we're going to be doing on the academy is talking about, you know, this day and age of gun retention and holster retention. You know, no one teaches that. No one teaches that. Our competitors don't. You know, everyone's teaching, you know, how to shoot paper. But when it comes down to it, you have to think about real life things. You know, in most cases, especially this day and age, you guys are going to be, versus pulling the trigger, you're going to be pulling your gun out really to stop a threat more than anything. And what do you do when someone that's unarmed grabs your gun? Those are real important things, and, you know, or grabs you, you know, how to, you know, get yourself back to a safe position to defend yourself if you can't pull the trigger or you put on the ground. These are all the things that we're going to be going over in the academy.
Sure.
To show you guys, to really help you out. So we're really, really happy about Rob. But I'm sorry, continue.
I think there's two things I would like to touch on today, since we have Rob here, because of his experience, you know, and his expertise in use of force and training. But two things that I keep seeing that almost as prereqs for all this stuff.
Yes.
One thing, and we've talked about both of them today. The first being that training, what you fall back on.
That's right.
Yeah.
And for me, that training falls back actually before you get into any training. And that the one mentality I've always had is physical fitness.
That's right.
And being physically fit, because all of that training falls back on your ability as a person, your physical ability, and then also the second thing, which you mentioned earlier, was mechanical. And actually, we were talking earlier, Gary's putting together a presentation for a local group on the aftermath of a shooting, and he added a new slide, and it was talking about at what point you lose mechanical function, and it was pretty low on the heart rate. So we might talk about that, like your thoughts on that as far as maybe kind of a system of how to look at it, of building your training. You know, where would you start? Would you start with, you know, physical fitness and then go on to what would you go next? And then also talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people who, you know, might think, or if they do have training in certain ways about the mechanical ability of your body and to perform those mechanical movements, because they're going to go pretty quick, right?
It depends on your level of training
And your level,
and your level of fitness. It's a really big deal when you've got somebody that's never done anything like this. And so many guys want to rush ahead and get into the really big stuff. I want to do this. I want to run and gun. I want to do active target stuff. And you know, we touched on it a minute ago. Stan's talking about, you know, they get you out there and they teach you how to put holes in paper. There's a really critical element of going out there and learning really basic fundamentals and safety things and putting those holes in paper. You got to spend that time. You're not just going to step out there and all of a sudden you're running and gunning and you're shooting high speed courses. Those things are the things that you fall back on, and you fall back to your level of preparation. So you get yourself to a level of physical fitness, and then even though you're there, the mental aspect comes into it, because there's physiological things that happen in really high stress critical situations, and all of a sudden you start getting into things where that heart rate goes up, you can't control your breathing, and all of a sudden you're fatiguing really, really fast, and your fine motor skills go out the window. With preparation, you can train yourself to overcome those things. There's so many things that, you know, it's one thing that you pull a firearm and you know, you're at a low ready position or whatever, and you're trying to utilize that as a deterrent in that situation where it's got to that level that this is really rapidly approaching this deadly force kind of incident. But you touched on it. What happens if that guy is not deterred by that? And he closes the gap, and all of a sudden he's got his hands on your gun. Your whole world has changed right then, because you're not prepared mentally for the changes that are fixing to happen. So part of that is understanding what can occur and how to kind of overcome those things. Just with breath control and super simple little things that we can train guys up with. But you still have to take the time and put the effort in to improve your physical fitness and your mental focus and all of those things. They all really dovetail and work together, because you can have one and not the others, and then all of a sudden you're just kind of plummeting and you're done, you know, in seconds.
You know, and like Mike was saying, you know, I mean, without, you know, I call that the from couch to the octagon mentality.
Right.
You know, there's so many things in between. I mean, you're not immediately going to become an MMA fighter because you get off the couch. And so there's a lot of training that has to, you know, go on between that. And, you know, we talk, you know, sometimes that, you know, I say sometimes that, you know, if you train, you know, like you're getting ready for Armageddon, but please understand that the 95% of the time you're going to be dealing with that guy in the road rage situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to have the mindset of, okay, what do I do in these cases? You know, because you can't, because someone spits on your shoe, and we've had some calls like this, you can't pull your gun on them. So, you have to have an understanding and go through these scenarios in your head. Mike and I always talk about, mental preparedness and, putting yourself in situations in your mind, prepare you so that you have in your mind set things, because you have to train yourself even mentally for these altercations.
Right.
And, it's just so important that you guys get a hold of this and you do some of the things that we're doing. And that's why we teach this stuff. Everyone else, that's one of the things that a lot of our members, they call and they give us kudos for, our articles and our podcast and the academy stuff. And that's why we're going to, start doing some more of that to get you guys prepared to be your own risk managers. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to be there. It's just going to be you. And you have to make the right decisions, because the wrong decisions could launch you into a battle for your freedom, beyond the battle for your life.
Right.
And there's also another aspect, I think, to this when it comes to just dealing with other people. When you talk about physical confrontations, you talk about body mechanics.
That's right.
Understanding body mechanics, but also body signs of aggression and stuff. But there's another aspect of when you brought up, pulling your firearm on somebody that's unarmed. There's also this other aspect of understanding like reactions,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the things that you would think would be a deterrent, as in pulling a firearm out and introducing it to a situation where you have two people, whether it be a road rage or whether it be just a confrontation. A lot of people think that gun will deter that, but that's not necessarily the case.
No.
And it's all due to, human interaction and what state of mind this person is, because they may not be in a rational state. Introducing that firearm may make them more aggressive. And we've seen it time and time again.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
and it may not just be somebody behind the wheel. I mean, we don't know what their mental capacity is, and we've got so much mental illness stuff out there going
Yep.
on. You're talking about under the influence of something. These people have put something on board that for whatever reason they get liquid courage, or they just don't respond to things in a rational manner. And honestly, the biggest deal, we're talking about the training stuff for Armageddon, worst case scenario. This is as bad as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really never making a determination that I'm going to deploy deadly force.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else makes that determination for
Yeah.
me. That their actions cause my response. The training on the mental aspect of it is understanding that absolute best case scenario is complete avoidance.
That's right.
Right.
There's nothing to say that I can't just go away from the situation.
Yes.
I'll back down. I'm not too proud. I'm good with that. I've been knocked down by both you guys. If I don't got to do that, I don't want to do that. So.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I was kind of getting to is, avoidance. We always talk about avoidance, and that's the biggest thing, because, and you never know, even beyond the chemical or mental, imbalances. I mean, somebody might just have something that triggers them,
Right.
that they're normally, a rational person, but then something just triggers them, especially now with everything going on, with politics and, where we're at in our society right now. Avoidance is really the main thing that you need to look at. And that was the point. It's just you never know what that reaction is going to be by that other person.
You're right. And just to piggyback what Mike's saying, like unwittingly, like all of you are pushing into your life anxiety, and fear because of all this stuff in the internet that you're taking in. And you look at that stuff over and over, and all the riots and all, people being pulled out of their cars and different things like that. Yes, you have to be prepared for that. But the more of those that you take in, if you're not balancing that out with what would I do in this scenario,
Right.
that's where you're losing it, because all you're doing is making yourself fearful and being anxious. And the way that you train and what you train most at, that's what you're going to go to when you're feared.
Correct.
And that is grabbing your gun. So you have to think through it and say, okay, when you see these and you look at these viral videos, you go, okay, what would I do in the situation? How would I avoid that? How would I get out of that? And you of course, you have to go through the deadly force aspect of it, but you also have to train your mind to understand, how could I get out of it before I pull the trigger?
Yes.
Options.
That's right. You have to train options.
Well, I mean, with the current things going on in different parts of the country, I mean, how many of these guys are getting caught up in stuff because they just wanted to go watch?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why are you going to insert yourself into that problem to begin with?
Correct.
You know, look at it on the news. I don't need to be a part of that. I mean, it's just one of those. It's a decision. It's not like I've turned the corner and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I'm in this situation.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that, when you see those things happening and somebody being pulled out of their car or something like that, that's the ones you need to start preparing now. What are my options? What are the things I can do? Because if I think about those things ahead of time, I'm usually able to respond in a much more clearly thought out, rational way than just going into panic mode.
Yes.
You know, and it doesn't, the funny thing is, it doesn't take much to add that stress.
Mm-hmm.
No.
You know, you think about,
Especially if you've never been
yeah,
inoculated with it. You know, we in the academy settings, we absolutely, from day one, you show up and we
add stress.
We add stress.
Mm-hmm.
We manufacture it because
That's right.
I got to see how you respond. And once we're there, and there's people on day one that decide, I can't do this.
This is not for me.
They never come back.
That's right.
yeah,
But as you go through the training cycles, and you up that up, it's why we put time sequences and mandatory magazine changes and things like that in our firearms training, is because I'm making you function through a stressful situation, even though it's just a time stressor.
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm.
And my way of coaching there was always, you've got 4 rounds in 4 seconds or whatever it is. Don't race to get all 4 rounds off.
Mm-hmm.
If all you can get is 3, make 3 accurate shots.
That's right.
Eat that round. You don't got to do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
So that's part of learning how to deal with those stressors is realizing these are things I can do to overcome those things.
And even like environmental. How many times have you gone? You probably know this from the wrestling room, but you do a workout and then you go somewhere else. You do the exact same workout with a different group of people,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, "Why am I so tired?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why am I? I remember when I was with ATF, I'd go to different, like Georgetown University or down in Dallas a lot. I'd go to different places to train, and just a different place to train. You're doing the same thing,
Yes.
but it wears you out so much more. I mean, even just little changes like that
Right.
make a big difference.
Mhm.
And like Stan was saying, to be able to have those options in your mind. Well, like Rob was saying, number one, don't put yourself in that position.
That's right.
But then having the options, it's just so important right now. What they both said, and we're seeing this play out time, every day. These things happen where it all comes down to what was that? What were they doing there?
Right.
Kenosha. What were you doing there?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just really something to think about, and I'm excited for the training that we've already looked at some courses, 2 or 3 courses that we hope to add in 2021 that I think are going to be huge in that.
Right.
So let's jump to out of training and into your background in being on the other side of the witness stand. Because we've all been on our side where we've arrested someone and we're explaining to the judge and jury what happened, or in your shooting, like when Mike was sued as well. I mean, explaining away why you made these decisions, but you've been on the opposite side of that when you've been pulled in as a court certified expert,
Right.
And sometimes end up on the opposite side of what police have done in shootings, right?
Well, I have. I've worked cases against police officers.
Mm-hmm.
Not the situation you would sign up to be in, but if you can't do that with somebody wearing a badging a gun, you should not be allowed to do that against the general population. Period.
Correct. Yeah.
And I've done that within the, as a expert for the prosecution. I've been an expert for the defense. And my deal isn't to give you a valid reason why you did X, Y, Z. My deal is to come in and tell you, as the law stands, this is why what happened is okay. It is it's one of those things that sometimes we don't always get it right. That's why we go to jury trials. We let an impartial jury hear all the evidence, and they make that decision for us.
Yes.
I've worked civilian cases. I've worked law enforcement cases. I worked lawsuits against police officers for a number of years. It's just really putting out the information for jurors or whoever is sitting in judgment once something is taken to the point of trial, that I want to explain to those sitting in those decision-making chairs how this applies and how the law applies to it and that kind of thing.
And for our listeners and our members, one of the things that's important about, we're really intentional about who we bring on board with our organization, because in a lot of cases, we're experts in different areas. And when you think about that, especially when we look at your cases, there are times where, like in the Maddox case, for instance, Don and the lawyers that we hired for him had to make a decision, because it's a very important decision. It's like, okay, do we put this person on the stand?
Right.
Because some of you don't need to be there because you'll hurt yourself. And, and others are fine to be able to sit up there and deal with that, and that's one of the reasons why we have Sean and Don and people, that can help you go through, because once again, the difference between us and them is that we can set up the scenario and build a scenario in which we have Don, ask you the hard questions, or put you in a position where Gary, from the homicide detective or being, working for the prosecution side, Rob, stepping in and being able to say, okay, these are some things I've seen in this case or that case that we have to watch for, because these are similar. Right. So we're able to tap into our experts and look at your case, after it occurred, and make the right decisions for you and help the defense team make the right decision for you to keep you out of prison. So it's really, really important that we have these people here. But keep talking about, there was a case that, was that a friend of yours, the doctor? Was he a friend of yours, or you just
No, I got a call from an attorney.
Okay.
And it was a gentleman in the southern part of the state. He was involved in actually a kind of a domestic kind of thing. He had his weekend visitation with his kids. The end of the weekend comes, and he goes to take his kids back to their mom. He had some medical conditions that really put him at risk. And as he's getting ready to leave, he winds up being attacked by his ex-wife's new boyfriend. In the middle of this thing, the ex-wife comes and becomes involved. Now it's a 2-on-1 thing. He gets knocked to the ground. And he is at that point that, because of pre-existing medical things, there is the potential for death for him. As he got knocked to the ground, he actually is a concealed carrier. He didn't have good equipment. He didn't have a holster on. He just had a pistol tucked into his waistband. When he hit the ground, it came out. And the other guy comes across, coming after his gun. He actually grabs his gun, makes the determination that this is his only option out of here now. He's in a bad way.
Yes.
And he fires a shot. But everything he did from that point forward would really be the way that I would coach somebody up.
Yes.
He immediately secures his firearm in his vehicle, has his daughter call 911.
Mhm.
He tells her what to say.
Yes.
We need police. We need
Medical.
medical. This has occurred. I had to defend myself, and that's the end of the communications.
Yes.
And he immediately goes back into being a physician and starts treating the guy that had just attacked him.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, down the way, they wound up, I believe it was more than a year later, filing charges on him. But something that you're just not ever prepared for. I mean, you may be prepared to defend yourself, but you unless you really know what you're doing, it was very educational for me, because I learned right then that I could not defend myself in a legal action if that happened to me off duty.
Correct. And his cost, how much?
He was over $600,000.
$600,000.
So,
and our highest case is about a little close to $400,000. So I mean, it can get up there.
yeah,
So
it
And
sure
that's
does.
not uncommon.
No, it's
No.
not
I mean,
uncommon.
500,000, 600,000 is not uncommon for a case like that. And that was a case in southern Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you look at cases in Dallas or
Yeah.
California. I mean,
Unfriendly states. I mean,
Well, and
it's really
this
gonna go
was
up.
this was really a very conservative farming community for the most part.
Yeah.
Just out in a rural area.
Yeah, and then, just like what Rob is saying, that scenario there, what he built for you, I mean, we're actually working a case right now where one of our members had to use deadly force, and we've been working this for a while, but it was the same scenario where his ex-boyfriend comes to the door and, is causing issues, and not to take anything away from our member, but he had his firearm on him and he engaged. I mean, there's a critical point where you have to decide, do I engage or not? Because when you bring a gun to a verbal argument or even a physical fight, it could be used. So sometimes if you have a barrier, which like a door, don't open it. Call the police, let them do their jobs, and don't try to become the police. Don't try to allow this tool of defense, to turn into an ego boost and get you stepping out beyond where you should be or beyond your training abilities.
Well, and for me, and I've carried a gun my whole life, but for me, especially out of law enforcement now, being retired, it's an implement of last resort.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is. It's just until I don't have any other choice, I'm not using a gun. And it's just exactly that. Because once you're in a confrontation with that, you are in an armed confrontation, whether it's in your hands or somebody else's.
Now talk about over the past 3 months. I mean, the nation has gone through a push where brand new users, like over 5 million people, have gone out and gotten and purchased firearms
This year,
for their
yes.
defense this year. And so the mindset of the new owner. I mean, what kind of message do you have for them?
Well, number one is hopefully this is something we can get put together relatively quickly. But I'd like to put some stuff together for that new gun owner, just to develop a measure of comfort with it, to understand that it's not going to do anything I don't make it do.
That's right.
That we don't lay them down and they just go off.
Yes.
But to become familiar, even as simply and kind of like firearms, a beginning firearms kind of thing, to explain, this is your cartridge. This is the parts of the cartridge. This is what makes it up. And that in itself, the whole thing is a round of ammunition.
Yes.
Everybody looks at it and goes, that's a bullet. Well, actually, the bullet's the projectile that comes out the end of it. But to just give you a familiarity, just really simple. And then we can go into the different firearms and revolvers or semi-autos, striker fire, hammer fire, whatever it is, and let you know how this thing functions, why it functions.
Yes.
Because the more I know about it, the more comfortable I become with it.
That's true.
And even still, even though, we've carried guns between us for almost 100 years, you're having to understand that it is something that can cause great damage and death. So every time you handle it, whether it's loaded, unloaded, whatever. Every time I touch a gun, it's a loaded gun until I know it's not for fact. So
Yes.
that's the very first thing I do. It's just simple things like that.
You know, I always like to add something. You know, if you guys get a chance, just get on the internet and pull up training firearms. So like little, you know, Safari Land has them, and other places, ASP. But you know, they're blue and of different colored guns.
Right.
But you know, while you're home, and if you know the pandemic's still going on, or you're quarantined in place, you know, if you think about purchasing one of those, having it delivered, so that you can start playing around with, you know, different things. So you're not playing with a real gun.
Sure.
But make it similar to what you have, and then, you know, roll around, have somebody, you know, train with you, like grabbing it, and you know, practice defending it, you know, so that you can be safe, but still getting that time, you know.
Right.
I mean, because it's really important. We do it all the time, especially when we teach. We have these things so that, you know, you can do the things that you can to make yourself better and to protect your weapon. Because if you can't protect the weapon, you're not going to be able to use it. So that stuff's important.
Well, and it goes back to what Mike was talking about earlier as far as the preparation of different things. If you've never actually fought hand-to-hand over a firearm,
Mm-hmm.
you have no earthly idea how quickly that's going to zap you.
Oh, absolutely.
And we learned that in that class that Stan was talking about from Mr. Hicks.
Yeah.
And the very first thing we did, we brought it back and immediately put that into practice.
That's right.
In police training.
Yeah, fighting over firearm is really, really important.
It is not a good thing to be. I mean, and until you learn what to do and how to maneuver with the thing, it's exhausting.
Yes.
So
I love it.
Cool.
You got anything further?
No key takeaways?
Yeah.
I'll start. I think for me, it's what Rob was just saying. Familiarity leads to comfort, leads to safety.
confidence.
Confidence, yeah. And I think that's for the many people out there who first-time gun owners, you know, become familiar with it. I would suggest to try to find a trainer in your area. And when I'm talking about a trainer, very basic training, starting with functionality of a firearm, you know, and like I said, familiarity, how it works, and then go from there and just take baby steps, because that's the biggest thing. And I'll even admit, you know, when I left law enforcement, I didn't carry for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And even just being out of carrying every day for a short time, you become uncomfortable and you have to get that back. So don't think anything of it if you're, you know, and I've gotten calls from people, I'm just not comfortable. And like Rob said, once you understand how that firearm functions, that it's not going to go off, and you understand the 4 basic rules of firearms, then you can move forward. So that would be my key takeaway, would be that.
So mine is going to be really simple, and you know, I always fall back on training here first, training here second, and you know, training is so important, and your mindset, you know, being aware. You know, we talk about probably, you know, this in the past 6 months, all of us has been more aware than we ever have in our lives in reference to identifying people and threats and stuff. So keep that going. Identify it. I'm also going to throw in there what I talked about earlier about conditioning yourselves to be in an anxious state. You know, be mindful of what you watch, and anytime you watch something, viral videos or whatever, make sure you go through in your mind, what would I do in this scenario to avoid, to de-escalate, and to use deadly force?
I really like all the stuff going on right now, and how everybody gets so twisted up. You get so, yeah, and we get calls up here. Oh my gosh, if that happened at my house, would I be covered?
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing snippets of an incident on the news, and that's all you're going to see. You're not getting a full picture. You don't know all the background. You don't know everything that's going on, whether it's a law enforcement related shooting, whether it's a self-defense shooting, or something like what happened up in Kenosha. We don't know the full story.
Mm-hmm.
So don't call me and ask what about this, because I don't have the answer. I would never make an opinion on something without knowing all the facts.
Correct.
That's when we can start really breaking it down and discussing. We've all sat in that position where we get to be critical of an incident, but we can be critical because we know all of the information at the end of an investigation. So my deal is to look at those things and understand things happen, bad things happen, but don't get wrapped up in, oh my gosh, what about this, what about that? Start doing visualization things and thinking how you would have responded in a similar situation and how you could have taken yourself out of that situation. Those are the big deals for me. So I'm really looking forward and anxious to seeing what kind of training we can get out there for guys. I'm not even opposed if people had ideas and it was like, hey, I'd really like to see you touch on this or something like that, and just email in or something and at least have ideas what people are looking specifically for.
That's right. And just to piggyback Rob real quick and to put you guys at ease, how we operate with our organization is we push, resources toward you upon your phone call. You don't have to call up here and ask us, okay, here's a new case. Would you cover me if? As long as you are acting in self-defense, we're going to cover you, all right? Don't be the aggressor in it. Don't be a criminal, because we're not going to cover any criminal acts. And we're not talking if somebody charged you with murder. We're talking about, regular felonious acts. If you're not doing that, know that you're going to be covered. If you have something that you can articulate, that you use self-defense, we're going to be there for you. Don't worry about it. So you don't have to call and say, hey, there's a new case. Would you cover me if? You have to worry about you and what you're going to do in these cases. We're going to be there for you. And we lean on your side. I mean, if you look at the Maddox case in point, the police said it was murder. Prosecutor, investigator said it was murder. We looked at it, and we have our own team of experts and say, no, this is a self-defense case. And we pushed at him all of these resources and helped him to get to the point of a not guilty verdict. Experts to help you. I mean, we have all that for you. So don't worry about it. You guys are going to be all right. We got you. We got your back.
Justin, you got a takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the thing, and it's come up several times and it comes up quite a bit in these discussions, the most important thing I think people get from training is options.
Yes.
The more trained and experienced you are, the more options you have, because you know what to look for. You have an idea of generally how things can go down. You guys have watched and participated in who knows how many incidents where violence is used, or it happened, or it could have happened and didn't happen. And the more you're exposed to that kind of thing, the more options you have. It's the old cliche of if the only tool you own is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but to me, that's the thing, and that's something I try to practice, and that's something I tell everybody that is approaching me now, and it's been going on for months with all this madness going on. Everybody wants to buy a gun, and I'm all for that, but I try to really get it through their mind that it's not a talisman.
Yeah,
You're not going to buy this machine, and it's going to make you safe. It's buying a race car doesn't make you a race car driver.
That's right.
So, and it's just one tool of many, and it's the last one you ever want to use.
Right.
So, absolutely, start thinking about stuff and working on things, but just understand it's a lot more involved than, hey, I spent $500, now I don't have to worry anymore.
That's right.
So, options, that's my thing.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And Rob, it's great to have you on.
Thanks.
Welcome,
Glad to
brother.
be here.
All right, you guys be safe.